Campfire Classics is a classic literature podcast. However, your hosts will occasionally use not-so-classy language and immature humor to describe very mature situations. As such, listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Ken Sandberg.
And I'm Heather Michelle Lawler.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
I have to burp, but I don't want to burp right on the microphone.
Now you've built it up.
Oh, there it was.
Gotta let that out.
I was jokingly burping right before we recorded, and it, one got stuck.
Yeah. You can't let that kind of thing build up, though. You have to just, let it out.
You gotta let it out, or it's, painful. It's like swallowing, down the wrong pipe.
Well, it's literally swallowing down the wrong pipe. You're swallowing air down the wrong direction. That's why you burp.
Oh, yeah, that too.
So it's not like that. It's exactly, yes.
Oh, good.
Nail on the head.
I'm a scientist. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our scientific podcast. Oh, wait.
Welcome to Science Corner, where we science harder than anyone has ever scienced before.
You signed up for it. Here you are.
To boldly go where no scientist has ever dared go.
And they've never gone there because it's bullshit.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it.
Bullshit.
Welcome to Bullshit Corner, where we bullshit.
That's way more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of really the whole thing, isn't it?
That really is. That's what we do. I mean, we pick a story and we bullshit.
And then eventually we get to the end of the story and
then we bullshit some more.
And then we go away.
Yeah. And then we come back and it's like people come back and it's like, cool.
Yeah. So if that doesn't get you excited for this episode, I don't know what will.
Y'all, it has been a long week because I've started 2 jobs this week.
Yeah. Hey, why don't you talk about what you did today? That was exciting.
I was Betsy Ross for the first time at the Betsy Ross house. Yeah. They let me go in there in costume a day early because they've been very happy with my training. And my parents, it was their last day, and they were like, "Yeah, you're ready. Let's do this."
Yeah.
So I spent.
So believe
4
it or
hours.
not, this foul-mouthed sailor of a human being
is Betsy Ross, and we do
was
not know
the family-facing Betsy Ross.
We do not know what Betsy talked like or who she was known as a little rebel. So I'm gonna guess Betsy had some opinions of her own. So I keep it clean and tidy in the Betsy Ross house, but she's got some fire underneath her. In fact, I was told today that they do believe I am the first redheaded Betsy, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's
I like that.
Pretty cool. But yeah, so if you're in Philadelphia and you want to come to the Betsy Ross house, come stalk me there. Oh yeah, wait, I shouldn't tell people that.
Well, I mean, most of the people who listen to this are people that you would be delighted to see at the Betsy Ross house.
I would be delighted to see. If you're one of my stalkers listening to this, don't come to the Betsy Ross.
If you're one of Heather's stalkers listening to this, you should come to the Betsy Ross house tomorrow at midnight and go stand in the workshop for 5 minutes after you've broken in.
Yeah, nothing bad will happen to you.
Definitely someone friendly will show up to say hello to you.
It might be Heather. It might be someone else. I love how I just spoke about myself in the third person.
It might be Betsy Ross.
It might be Betsy Ross. Yeah.
Betsy's always there.
I mean, she is buried outside of the house.
Spirit.
Yes. No one asked me today if it's haunted. I was waiting for the haunted.
I just got my housing assignment for
yes
for up in Maine for the next show that I'm doing. I just got an email with my housing assignment, and my housing roommate is listed as Frank the Ghost.
And I immediately went, "What is that about?" And I'm so happy.
So yeah, so I responded. I got all the other stuff looks really good. Got full bedroom and bathroom and kitchen and all that stuff, but I responded saying, yeah, this all looks awesome. As a skeptic, I am unconcerned. As a believer, my fiance is intrigued. Who the fuck is Frank the Ghost?
I know I was excited to visit before because I love this area of Maine Ken's going to be in. I've talked about it before, Portland. But I am even more excited now because apparently his roommate is a ghost. And if you follow this podcast at all, you know how much that makes me happy. So, yay, Frank the Ghost.
So stay tuned in the next couple of weeks for some ghost hunting episodes.
Ooh, that was like an evil laugh. I like it.
I'm good at those. So, hi there, listener. How you doing, camper? You hanging in, having a good time? As I mentioned at the beginning, this is Campfire Classics. It's not a science podcast or a bullshit podcast. This is a literary comedy podcast where we attempt to cold read short stories that we've pulled out of the obscurity of the public domain, and we read them for you. For the first time right here on mic, and we frequently make fun of accidental or intentional penis jokes and outdated misogyny. They really kind of go hand in hand.
I mean, they do.
Misogyny and dick jokes.
And dick jokes.
What we do is we read these short stories that we find in the public domain, and this week I have chosen a story for Heather to read. But before we get into the story this week, I'm going to read a few little fun facts to sort of put us in the mood.
Yes.
Consider this literary foreplay.
Hot. That's hot.
So, the literary trope of the evil clown is a relatively new one.
We're back to clowns?
Yeah, so I'm scooping fun facts and clown corner into one thing this week.
Damn. All right.
So most people who study such things trace the origins to the modern evil clown either to the 1980s with Stephen King's It or to the 1940s with Batman's The Joker.
Okay.
Either way, its true origins are kind of unclear. You covered the Pagliacci clown incident in a previous Clown Corner, but as far as evil clowns as part of entertainment, it's actually really hard to track down when they first became a thing.
Scary,
like a trope, a sort of almost a cliche.
Almost a cliche to the point where when you say clown, people go, ah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that was not the case. For most of clown history, clowns were like, if there was an evil clown, that was a weird thing.
Yeah.
And it's only very recently that clown and creepy have become almost synonymous.
Almost like common public knowledge. Yeah.
So the evil clown appeared a few times in the 18th century. In writing, we have things like Edgar Allan Poe, who has a short story called Hop Frog that features some of the trademarks of an evil clown character. And it's said to be based on an actual event from the 14th century. Don't worry, we'll go into that a little more later.
Okay.
In drama, there's the Pagliacci clown and the show that it was said to be a ripoff of, La Femme de Tabarin by Mendes.
Yes.
But that's kind of it in the 18th, in the 18th and like 19th century. Then we make it deep into the 20th century before we really start seeing these sort of intentionally creepy clowns with any sort of regularity. And really, it doesn't start until the Joker, and only if you count him, which a lot of people don't, because he's a comic book villain.
Because it's like not really a person, like it's, because it's a drawing.
Yeah.
Until they started making films of it or TV shows, And it was very over the top almost.
Yeah. So then, 1978, we have John Wayne Gacy / Pogo the Clown. And that really seems to be the beginning of all of the mayhem taking off, because shortly after that, we have Pennywise hit book stands, and then that TV miniseries with Tim Curry, the movie, was 1990. And all of a sudden, we've got evil clowns fucking everywhere. The 80s gave us killer clowns from outer space, Krusty the Clown, and Insane Clown Posse.
Yep.
The 90s gave us Doink, the WWF wrestler.
Doink.
And more comic book villains, like there's one called the Violator, who first appeared in 1992.
Ew, I hate that name.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Gross.
He's creepy.
And he's a clown? Good God, that's terrifying.
And in the 90s, we got entire websites dedicated to tracking sightings of evil clowns in the wild, essentially, and studying the fear of clowns. But all of that didn't start until sort of the late 70s, early 80s. So, listeners, if you remember the 80s, and I mean actually remember them like you were a person, not just like a toddler in the 80s.
I remember a couple years.
If you really remember the 80s, or even better, if you have strong memories in the 70s or earlier,
that was before me.
I would love to know if you can pinpoint when you first recognized evil clown as a trope.
Oh, yeah.
So
like our parents,
really anyone from like Gen X or earlier.
Yeah.
So if you can, if you can think back to when was the first time you started associating evil clown as like something you kind of expected? I'd be curious to hear about that. So please do. You can shoot a text message if you happen to have our phone numbers. You can shoot Facebook message to any of our social media. Just look for Campfire Classics Podcast, or send an email to 5050artsproduction@gmail.com and let us know, when's the first time you remember encountering the evil clown trope?
See, this all makes sense. This is why my parents hung that scary-ass clown above my bed and didn't think anything of it, because they did not associate clowns.
They didn't grow up with the evil clown.
Well, that's so funny, because I guess I didn't really either, because like that was hanging above my bed when I was like 5 and 6, and I always was just kind of like, it's looking at me.
Now, fear of clowns generally is separate from the evil clown trope.
Yes.
Like, it is possible to find that image a little unsettling.
I didn't even find it unsettling. I did find it unsettling. Good job, Stephen King. But I didn't necessarily find the painting. I didn't necessarily find the clown unsettling. It was the painting was very realistic. You've seen it.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's like following you, because it's got those kinds of eyes.
Yep.
So I think
the ones that were painted looking straight out, so everywhere you,
and it's just like, why are you so sad? Because you're supposed to be a happy, and it just like, I mean, that's a metaphor for my life. Oh, boom, bachika. And that, my friends, is what depression looks like.
This week's episode brought to you by Sertraline.
Sertraline. The generic Zoloft. Medication is your friend. Damn, that got dark real fast.
Anyway.
It's been a week, y'all. You know, I'm just an open book here.
Do you remember when clowns were fun?
All right, tell me more about clowns.
And that's pretty much what I got. Was I found it interesting that's when the evil clown started to take over.
I like
that is this week's Fun Clown Corner Facts.
Ooh.
This week you will be reading Edgar Allan Poe's Hop Frog.
I was like, I bet I'm reading Hop Frog, because you did not dive into what the fuck that 14th century thing. And I'm like, and we just recently saw his grave.
We did,
when we were seeing Lizzo, which sounds like a weird night.
It was a
when we went
it was
to
a
see
weird
Lizzo,
night.
and then we saw Edgar Allan Poe's grave. But yeah, it was pretty cool. So yay, I'm excited.
All right, so let's start this fire.
Hop Frog by Edgar Allan Poe. I never knew anyone so keenly alive to a joke as the king was. So it's about a jester?
No one ever.
Yeah, right. Must be a happy king. He seemed to live only for joking. To tell a good story of the joke kind, and to tell it well, was the surest road to his favor.
Okay.
Thus it happened that his 7 ministers were all noted for their accomplishments as jokers. They all took after the king, too, in being large, corpulent, oily men. Ew!
That's gross.
See, this time right back to small ball syndrome, right?
Hey, oily men do not inherently...
No. I just immediately, when I hear a large, corpulent, oily man. I imagine like the 70s in a like sauna with like mafia guys naked, like being like, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
someone probably owns a rug factory.
yeah, it's something, and they're doing some sketchy shit. Yeah. Okay. All right. So large, corpulent, oily men, as well as inimitable jokers. Ooh, we got big words here, Edgar Allan. Good for you.
Yeah, he was a clever fucker.
He was. Good for him. Some of us have to be. Whether people grow fat by joking or whether there is something in fat itself which predisposes to a joke, I have never been quite able to determine, but certain it is that a lean joker is a rara avis in terris. I'm guessing it's Latin for like rarer than like dirt or something rare.
Rare. I'm gonna guess it's something like a rare sight on Earth.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. A rare sight. Yeah, avis view, terrace would terra, earth, ground, dirt.
Ah, nope. Right idea. Absolutely right idea.
Yeah.
But rara avis is not rare sight. It's rare bird.
Rare bird on the earth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Terrace is Earth, yes.
Okay.
But rare bird.
Okay, so he's claiming that all funny people are fat.
Yes.
Which is funny to me. All right. That alone in itself is quite funny, actually.
Edgar Allan Poe was a lean man.
Yes. And he was not. Well, he actually kind of was funny.
I mean, so far.
I mean, he is funny though.
Yeah.
We've read a couple of his comedian stories. Why are they comedian stories? They're comedy stories.
Comedian.
Comedian.
Mark Twain was rather lean as well.
Was he?
Yeah. I mean, not obscenely so, but especially in his early years, he was.
For some reason, I always picture him with like a Missouri beer gut. With his mustache. He's like, got a big cigar. And he's like, I love Tom Sawyer.
I mean,
Come down into my cave and I'll show you. Why is he so gross?
I don't know. He certainly had a little bit. Come down into my cave. Let me tell you about
Thomas Sawyer and Mr. Huck Finn.
And Huckleberry.
Ew, why we turned Mark Twain into a disgusting man? Oh, no.
Bring me my huckleberries.
And a mint julep where you let it. Ah. And he's like shoving food in his mouth. Oily and gross. Okay, moving on.
Please.
About the refinements, or as he called them, the ghosts of wit, the king troubled himself very little. He had an especial admiration for breadth in a jest, and would often put up with length for the sake of it.
He likes it wide, he'll accept it long.
Over niceties wearied him. He would have preferred... Oh, Jesus Christ. Rabelas Rabelas's Gargantua.
I'll give you a hint. That name appears in The Music Man.
Rabelas?
Rabelais.
Rabelais. Oh, ball sack. Ball sack. Oh, yes.
It's Rabelais.
Yes. He would have preferred Rabelais' Gargantua to the Zadig of Voltaire, and upon the whole, practical jokes suited his taste far better than verbal ones.
Oh,
he likes
he's a
slapstick.
practical joker, yeah.
He likes slapstick. He did not like witty comedy.
No,
yes.
He likes it when people fall down.
It's quick. Yeah, he's definitely a the three guys.
Three Stooges?
The Three Stooges. I was going
the three guys. The guys. The three guys.
The guys.
The funny guys.
The funny guys. For some reason, I wanted to say the Hardy Boys. That's a very different group of people.
He was a big fan of the Hardy Boys. Yeah.
He loved a good mystery about some kids in the 50s solving crimes.
The Hardy Boys, the Boxcar Children loved them.
The Babysitters Club.
Big Judy Blume fan, that king.
Sweet Valley High. Good times, y'all.
Great oldies. Cool 108.
At the date of my narrative, professing jesters had not altogether gone out of fashion at court. Several of the great continental powers still regained their fools, who wore motley with caps and bells, and who were expected to be always ready with a sharp witticism at a moment's notice in consideration of the crumbs that fell from the royal table. Sounds like working at a restaurant.
Yep.
Here, wear this stupid vest with buttons on it, and we'll pay you $2 an hour, and maybe someone will give you a little extra money on the side.
If you're especially clever.
If you're especially funny and clever. Yep. Well, damn. There it is, folks. Waiters are just the jesters of the modern time.
Oof, that hurts.
Our king, as a matter of course, retained his fool. The fact is, he required something in the way of folly, if only to counterbalance the heavy wisdom of the 7 wise men who were his ministers, not to mention himself. Wow.
Thought highly of himself.
Yes, ego much? His fool, or professional jester, was not only a fool, however. His value was troubled in the eyes of the king by the fact of his being also a dwarf and a cripple. Dwarves were as common at court in those days as fools, and many monarchs would have found it difficult to get through their days. Days are rather longer at court than elsewhere. Oh, fuck off! They're like, my days are so hard when I sit on this throne and I have to yeah, life's really hard.
We pity you.
We pity you hard, so he needs his jester. Without both a jester to laugh with and a dwarf to laugh at. But as I have already observed, your jesters, in 99 cases out of 100, are fat, round, and unwieldy, so that it was no small source of self-gratulation with our king that in Hopfrog, this was the fool's name, he possessed a triplicate treasure in one person. This guy's name's Hopfrog.
Yep.
That's a cute name. I feel like this is like going to be like the basis of Leapfrog or something like that. I believe the name Hopfrog was not that given to the dwarf by his sponsors at his baptism. No shit, Sherlock.
I don't think Hopfrog was his Christian name.
Can you imagine going to like a baptism and you're like, we baptize the Hopfrog.
Hopfrog Aloysius Anderson.
So he does not believe this dwarf was given this name by his sponsors at baptism, but it was conferred upon him by general consent of the 7 ministers on account of his inability to walk as other men do.
That's fucked up.
That's really fucked. In fact, Hopfrog could only get along by a sort of interjectual gait, something between a leap and a wriggle. It sounds like a cool dance, though. Like, leap, wriggle with it, and leap, and wriggle with it. Hopfrog would be like the life of the fuck. Well, clearly he was the life of the party.
Was.
He's a fucking jester.
Professionally.
Got paid full time for this shit. He would like slay on Comic Last Standing or something like that. Yeah. A movement that was afforded illimitable.
Yes, illimitable.
Illimitable. I think I figured out some of the words I have trouble with are when there's too many straight lines in a row.
Yeah, well, because that is ILLI.
L-I, and it all kind of looks the same, and it just makes me go...
It looks like a barcode.
It's like...
And I can't read barcode.
I don't read barcode, not yet. We'll see until they program our brains.
Fat one, skinny one, fat one, fat one, skinny one, skinny one, skinny one, fat one, skinny one, fat one.
That's how he labeled jesters, so yeah, okay. A movement that afforded illimitable amusement, and of course, consolation to the king for... notwithstanding the protuberance of his stomach and the constitutional swelling of the head, which one? The king, by his whole court, was accounted a capital figure. But although Hopfrog, through the distortion of his legs, could move only with great pain and difficulty along a road or floor, the prodigious muscular power which nature seemed to have bestowed upon his arms by way of compensation for deficiency in the lower limbs enabled him to perform many feats of wonderful dexterity where trees or ropes were in question or anything else to climb. At such exercises, he certainly much more resembled a squirrel or a small monkey than a frog.
That's going to come into play, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. He's going to, like, scurry up a fucking tree and the king is going to get eaten by a bear or something. And, like, there's going to be something
I like that game.
I like that game.
Eat the king. Eat the rich.
King. Eat the rich. Save the jesters. I mean, yeah. Eat
the rich. Save the jesters.
Eat the rich. Save the actors.
I know what I'm about.
You know Hot Frog hates that fucking guy. Come on. I am not able to say with precision from what country Hot Frog originally came from.
He was French.
No, he is not, because if he talks, he's not going to have a French accent.
He's French.
Nope. It was from some barbarous region, however, that no person ever heard of.
France.
Yes, the mystical land of France that no one has ever heard of, yes.
Exactly.
It was from some barbarous region, however, that no person had ever heard of, a vast distance from the court of our king. Hot Frog and a young girl, very little less dwarfish than himself, although of exquisite proportions and a marvelous dancer, okay, Esmeralda, had been forcibly carried off from their respective homes in adjoining provinces. Had been forcibly carried off from their This is where my brain is right now. I have too many words in my head. I have an entire other life in my head. That sounds like it needs some more medication.
That's a whole different... Sertraline not going to do anything for that.
Oh, no. Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross is... I'm possessed.
Betsy Ross could read.
Betsy Ross could read very well. I don't know if she read any... Well, she wouldn't have read any Edgar Allan Poe. She wouldn't have read any
Edgar Allan Poe, not unless she was a time traveler.
What if Betsy Ross's demon possesses me while I'm working there?
What if Betsy Ross is Edgar Allan Poe?
Like reincarnated? I'm into it.
Well, I guess Poe would be Betsy Ross reincarnated. Yeah. What if the spirit of Betsy Ross
hop-frogged into
Edgar
Allan Poe? Yes. Well, think on that, kids. All right, where the fuck was I? Hot Frog and a very young girl, very less dwarfish than himself, although of exquisite proportions and a marvelous dancer, had been forcibly carried off from their respective homes in adjoining provinces and sent as presents to the king by one of his ever victorious generals. Under these circumstances, it is not to be wondered at that a close intimacy arose between the two captives. Indeed, they soon became sworn friends. Hot Frog, who, although he made a great deal of sport, was by no means popular, had it not in his power to render Tripetta many services. I'm guessing that's the woman's name?
I would guess. I'd also guess Tripetta.
Tripetta?
Tripetta seems
like
easier to say.
Geppetto, like
yeah.
Tripetta? Tripetta. That's a fun name.
Yeah.
But she, on account of her grace and exquisite beauty, although a dwarf, was universally admired and petted. So she possessed much influence and never failed to use it whenever she could for the benefit of Hot Frog. Oh, she'd like flirt with guys to like get extra food, get extra stuff. Yeah. She knew how to work it. On some grand state occasion, I forget what, the king determined to have a masquerade. And whenever a masquerade or anything of that kind occurred at our court, then the talents both of Hot Frog and Tripetta were sure to be called in play. Hot Frog, in especial, was so inventive in the way of getting up pageants, suggesting novel characters, and arranging costume for masked balls. Masked balls. That nothing could be done, it seems, without his assistance. Can't go about your day if you don't mask your balls. That is good life advice.
I suppose it depends on what you're counting as masking. Because while I prefer to not have mine just on display, I don't want them, like, wrapped up.
Well, no, it's more like keeping them hidden from public view.
Yes, absolutely.
Masking, yes. The night appointed for the fete had arrived. A gorgeous hall had been fitted up under Trippetta's eye with every kind of device which could possibly give éclat to a masquerade. Now, I'm seeing some French words, and I'm getting fucking scared. To a masquerade. The whole court was in a fever of expectation. As for costumes and characters, it might well be supposed that everybody had come to a decision on such points. Many had made up their minds as to what roles they would assume a week or even a month in advance, and in fact, there was not a particle of indecision anywhere, except in the case of the king and his 7 ministers. Why they hesitated, I never could tell, unless they did it by way of joke. Or probably they found it difficult on account of being so fat to make up their minds. Oh my God, this episode's going to offend a lot of people. I apologize to anyone who this is offending.
It's Edgar Allan Poe's fault.
Yeah, I just blame Edgar Allan Poe. It's fine.
He's just an old dick.
But he masks his balls, so it's fine. At all events, time flew, and at a last resource, they sent for Trippetta and Hopfrog. When the 2 friends obeyed the summons of the king, they found him sitting at his wine with the 7 members of his cabinet council. But the monarch appeared to be in very ill humor. He knew that Hopfrog was not fond of wine, for it excited the poor cripple almost to madness, and madness is no comfortable feeling. Oh, he just gets really drunk.
Gets too drunk, yeah.
Well, at least he knows. But the king loved his practical jokes and took pleasure in forcing Hopfrog to drink and, as the king called it, to be merry. "Come here, Hopfrog," said he, as the jester and his friend entered the room. "Swallow this bumper to the here."
The word is health.
I know. Do you ever create a character that's so fat your mouth stops working? I envisioned him being I can't, and so his mouth stops working.
He did sort of suddenly become the leader of the Gungans from the Star Wars prequels.
Exactly, yes.
Or possibly Jabba the Hutt.
Yes, exactly, that's what I'm envisioning. "Swallow this bumper to the health of your absent friends." Here Hopfrog sighed. "And then let us have the benefit of your invention. We want characters. Characters, man, something novel. Out of the way. We are wearied with this everlasting sameness. Come, drink the wine will brighten your wits." Hopfrog endeavored, as usual, to get up a jest in reply to these advances from the king. Oh, no. But the effort was too much. It happened to be the poor dwarf's birthday, and the command to drink to his absent friends forced the tears to his eyes. Oh. Many large bitter drops fell into the goblet as he took it humbly from the hand of the tyrant. "Oh!" roared the latter as the dwarf reluctantly drained the beaker. "See what a glass of good wine can do? See, your eyes are shining already." Poor fellow. His large eyes gleamed rather than shone, for the effect of the wine on his excitable brain was not more powerful than instantaneous. He placed the goblet nervously on the table and looked round upon the company with a half-insane stare. They all seemed highly amused at the success of the king's joke. "And now to business," said the Prime Minister, a very fat man. "Yes," said the king. "Come, Hopfrog, lend us your assistance. Characters, my fine fellow. We stand in need of characters, all of us. Ha ha ha!" And as this was seriously meant for a joke, his laugh was chorused by the 7. Hopfrog also laughed, although feebly and somewhat vacantly. "Come, come," said the king impatiently. "Have you nothing to suggest?" I am endeavoring to think of something novel, replied the dwarf, abstractedly, for he was quite bewildered by the wine. Endeavoring? Cried the tyrant fiercely. What do you mean by that? Ah, perceive, you are sulky and you want more wine. Here, drink this. He poured out another gobletful and offered it to the dwarf, who merely gazed at it, gasping for breath. Drink, I say, shouted the monster, or by the fiends. The dwarf hesitated. The king grew purple with rage. The courtiers smirked. Tripetta, pale as a corpse, advanced to the monarch's seat, and falling on her knees before him, implored to spare her friend. Oh no, she's about, girl, she loves her friend, you know. The tyrant regarded her for some moments in evident wonder of her audacity. He seemed quite at a loss what to do or say, how most becomingly to express, I'm not gonna make a joke about becomingly, to express his indignation. At last, without uttering a syllable, he pushed her violently from him and threw the contents of the brimming goblet in her face. Okay, now he's just a dick and he's wasting wine. I have no more patience for this guy. The poor girl got up as best she could and, not daring even to sigh, resumed her position at the foot of the table. There was a dead silence for about half a minute, during which the falling of a leaf or a feather might have been heard. It was interrupted by a low but harsh and protracted grating sound which seemed to come at once from every corner of the room. What are you making that noise for? Demanded the king, turning furiously to the dwarf. The latter seemed to have recovered in great measure from his intoxication and looked fixingly but quietly into the tyrant's face, merely ejaculated.
That might be the single best comeback you could make.
Comeback!
What are you making that noise for?
And then he ejaculated. Happy day, celebrate.
Seemed like rage ejaculation.
Ooh, is that? Yeah, it's like angry sex.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because it was
Maybe the wine got him very excited.
Because it was a response to the king's question, right? He was pissed off, so he ejaculated. Why are you making this sound?
He goes, I. All right, so Hot Frog has ejaculated. I'm so excited that word came into play here. It's always a pure joy. As ejaculation is, I'm sure. How could it have been me? The sound appeared to come from without, observed one of the courtiers. I fancy it was the parrot at the window wetting his bill upon his cage wires. True, replied the monarch, as if much relieved by the suggestion. But on the honor of a knight, I could have sworn it was the gritting of some vagabond's teeth. Hereupon the dwarf laughed. The king was too confirmed a joker to object to anyone's laughing, and displayed a set of large, powerful, and very repulsive teeth. Moreover, he avowed his perfect willingness to swallow as much wine as desired. The monarch was pacified, and having drained another bumper with no very perceptible ill effect, Hop Frog entered at once, and with spirit, into the plans for the masquerade. I cannot tell what was the association of idea, observed he very tranquilly. Observed he very tranquilly. Mouth is so tired.
It's a struggle tonight.
I've been talking all day in like old English speak. If Scott Stackhouse, if you're listening, this is what we call vocal exhaustion. This is called lip exhaustion. I cannot tell what was the association of idea, observed he very tranquilly, and as if he had never tasted wine in his life. But just after your majesty had done this, and, well, the parrot was making that odd noise outside the window, there came into my mind a capital diversion, one of my own country's frolics, often enacted among us at our masquerades, but here it will be all new altogether. Unfortunately, however, it requires a company of 8 persons, and here we are, cried the king, laughing at his acute discovery of the coincidence. 8 to a fraction. I and my 7 ministers come. What is the diversion? We call it, replied the dwarf, the 8 chained orangutans, and it really is excellent sport if well enacted. We will enact it, remarked the king, drawing himself up and lowering his eyelids. The beauty of the game, continued Hop Frog, lies in the fright it occasions among the women. Capital! Roared in chorus the monarch and his ministry.
Yeah, we love scaring women.
They're gonna die. I'm so excited. I will equip you as orangutans, proceeded the dwarf. Leave all that to me. The resemblance shall be so striking that the company of masqueraders will take you for a real beast. And of course, they will be much terrified as astonished. Oh, this is exquisite, claimed the king. Hop Frog, I will make a man out of you. Now all I'm singing is the Mulan song. Make a man out of you.
So now the king is Donny Osmond?
Well, let's be fair. I got some things to say. Also, why was Donny Osmond playing the Asian, commander on Mulan?
Because it was the 90s.
Yes, it was. Why did I play Top Tim and the King and I? Oh, damn.
Because it was the 90s?
That was the early 2000s. There wasn't much difference.
Harder to excuse.
Rude! We've all done things. I'm so glad Facebook was not around when I was a young. All right, anyway. Exquisite! Make a man out of you. The chains are for the purpose of increasing the confusion by their jangling. You are supposed to have escaped en masse from your keepers. Your Majesty cannot conceive the effect produced at a masquerade by 8 chained orangutans, imagined to be real ones by most of the company, and rushing in with savage cries among the crowd of delicately and gorgeously habited men and women. The contrast is inimitable.
Inimitable.
The contrast is inimitable. Is that right?
Yep.
That's a word that sounds wrong in your mouth. Inimitable. Inimitable.
I think it's the 3rd time you've said it in this story.
I know, and I hate it. It must be, said the king, and the council arose hurriedly as it was growing late to put in execution the scheme of Hop Frog. His mode of equipping the party as orangutans was very simple, but effective enough for his purpose. The animals in question had, at the epoch of my story, very rarely been seen in any part of the civilized world, and as the imitations made by the dwarf were sufficiently beast-like and more than sufficiently hideous, their truthfulness to nature was thus thought to be secured.
So he just made him look fucking gnarly.
Because, orangutans are orange and, very smart, and, and I had a great experience with them at the zoo. But he just was like, some
I'll just
paint here and some stuff here. And
slap some hair on him.
You look like an orangutan. Now let's chain you up and send you in and hope somebody beats the shit out of you. The king and his ministers were first encased in... we're actually going to get... Okay, we're going to get a visual here. The king and his ministers were first encased in tight-fitting stockinette shirts and drawers. Then they were saturated with tar. At this stage of the process, one of the party suggested feathers. But the suggestion was at once overruled by the dwarf, who soon convinced the 8 by ocular demonstration that the hair of such a brute of an orangutan was much more effectively represented by flax. Do you know what flax is? Flax is like fabric. Flax is what is used to make linen.
Yeah, I mean, flax is a type of plant.
I learned that as Betsy Ross. Yes, it's a plant.
Yeah.
And then they use that to make linen.
I didn't know it's what was used to make linen. I know that flax seed is like you can get oils from it and whatnot.
The plant of flax is the fibers that are used to make linen.
Cool.
Nerd. A thick coating of the latter was accordingly plastered upon the coating of tar. A long chain was now procured. First it was passed around the waist of the king and tied. Then about another of the party, and also tied, and then all successfully, in the same manner. When this chaining arrangement was complete, and the party stood in far apart from... When this chaining arrangement was complete, and the party stood as far apart from each other as possible, they formed a circle to make all things appear natural. Hop Frog passed the residue of the chain in 2 diameters at right angles across the circle, after the fashion was adopted at the present day by those who capture chimpanzees or other large apes in Bonnaroo. Bonnaroo is a music festival. They're into some kinky shit at Bonnaroo, man.
Yep. Like chaining up big furry apes.
Chaining big furry apes at Bonnaroo. That's hot. Oh, wow.
Hello, this is my gimp.
That'd be really hot. Bonnaroo's like out in the desert, isn't it?
My gimp the chimp.
Gimp the chimp.
Don't mind the chains. He likes it.
He's into it, yeah. Sub and Dom right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's retry that again. That's in Borneo, y'all, not Bonnaroo, just so you know. Though if you're into chains at Bonnaroo, that also makes sense.
That's cool. This is a judgment-free zone. Neither Hop Frog nor the chimps will judge you.
The grand saloon in which the masquerade was to take place was a circular room, very lofty and receiving the light of the sun only through a single window at top. At night, the season for which the apartment was especially designed, it was illuminated principally by a large chandelier, depending by a chain from the center of the skylight and lowered or elevated by means of a counterbalance as usual. But in order not to look unsightly, this ladder passed outside the cupola and over the roof. All right.
Cool.
The arrangements of the room had been left to Trippetta's superintendence. Oh, she's ready. But in some particulars, it seems, she had been guided by the calmer judgment of her friend, the dwarf. At his suggestion, it was that, on this occasion, the chandelier was removed. Its waxen drippings, which in warmer weather was quite impossible to prevent, would have been seriously detrimental to the rich dresses of the guests, who, on account of the crowded state of the saloon, could not be expected to keep from out of its center. That is to say, from under the chandelier. Additional sconces were set in various parts of the hall out of the way, and a flambeau emitted a sweet odor which placed in the right hand of each of the carotides that stood against the wall, some 50 or 60 altogether. The 8 orangutans, taking Hop Frog's advice, waited patiently until midnight, when the room was thoroughly filled with masqueraders, before making their appearance. No sooner had the clock ceased striking, however, than they rushed, or rather rolled in, all together, for the impediment of their chains caused most of the party to fall and all to stumble as they entered. The excitement among the masqueraders was prodigious. and filled the heart of the king with glee. As had been anticipated, there were not a few of the guests who supposed the ferocious-looking creatures to be beasts of some kind in reality, if not precisely orangutans. Because no one knows what a fucking orangutan looks like.
They're big and hairy. I don't know.
Scary! Many of the women swooned with affright, and had not the king taken the precaution to exclude all weapons from the saloon, his party might have expiated. Sometimes I glitch. Sometimes I glitch. Expectiated. His party, so many of the women swooned with affright, and had not the king taken the precaution to exclude all weapons from the saloon, his party might have expectiated.
Nope.
Expectiated.
Nope.
Expiated.
Yep.
Oh, Jesus. I'm so sweating.
He can't help you now.
His party might have Expedia.
His party might soon have contacted Expedia.com.
Yum. That's a different commercial.
You know what? Screw the masquerade ball. Let's go to Red Robin.
Yum. Oh my God, unlimited fries? Fuck yeah. I don't know why I'm not there all the time.
Red Robin.
Yum. Oh my God, I'm sweating profusely. Okay. Okay. What's happening? Expiated. His party might soon have expiated their frolic in their blood. As it was, a general rush was made for the doors, but the king had ordered them to be locked immediately upon his entrance, and at the dwarf's suggestion, the keys had been deposited with him. Wow, it's like he has a plan or something, this hot frog. While the tumult was at its height, and each masquerader attentive only to his own safety, for in fact there was much real danger from the pressure of the excited crowd, because, you know, when people are panicking.
Yeah, stampede.
Yep. The chain by which the chandelier ordinarily hung, and which had been drawn up on its removal, might have been seen very gradually to descend until its hooked extremity came within 3 feet of the floor. Soon after this, the king and his 7 friends, having reeled about the hall in all directions, found themselves at length in its center, and of course, in immediate contact with the chain. While they were thus situated, the dwarf, who had followed closely at their heels, inciting them to keep up with the commotion, took hold of their own chain at the intersection of the 2 portions which crossed the circle diametrically and at right angles. Here, with the rapidity of thought, he inserted the hook from which the chandelier had been wont to depend, and in an instant, by some unseen agency, the chandelier chain was drawn so far upon as to take the hook out of reach and, as an inevitable consequence, to drag the orangutans together in close connection and face to face. The masqueraders by this time had recovered, in some measure, from their alarm, and beginning to regard the whole matter as a well-contrived pleasantry, set up a loud shout of laughter at the predicament of the apes. "Leave them to me!" now screamed Hop Frog, his shrill voice making itself easily heard through all of the din. "Leave them to me! I fancy I know them. If I can only get a good look at them, I can soon tell who they are." Here, scrambling over the heads of the crowd, he managed to get to the wall when seizing a flambeau from one of the caratides, I think that's what I said before. When seizing a flambeau from one of the caratides, he returned as he went to the center of the room, leaped with the agility of a monkey upon the king's head, and thence clambered a few feet up the chain, holding down the torch to examine the group of orangutans and still screaming, "I shall soon find out who they are!" And now, while the whole assembly, the apes included, were convulsed with laughter, the jester suddenly uttered a shrill whistle when the chain flew violently up for about 30 feet, dragging with it the dismayed and struggling orangutans and leaving them suspended in midair between the skylight and the floor. Hop Frog, clinging to the chain as it rose, still maintained his relative position in respect to the 8 maskers, and still, as if nothing were the matter, continued to thrust his torch down towards them, as though endeavoring to discover who they were. So thoroughly astonished with the whole company at this ascent that a dead silence of about a minute's duration ensued. It was broken by just such a low, harsh, grating sound as had before attracted the attention of the king and his counselors, when the former threw the wine in the face of Trippetta. But on the present occasion, there could be no question as to whence the sound issued. It came from the fang-like teeth of the dwarf, who ground them and gnashed them as he foamed at the mouth and glared with an expression of maniacal rage into the upturned countenances of the king and his 7 companions. "Aha!" said at length the infuriated jester. "Aha! I begin to see who these people are now." Here, pretending to scrutinize the king more closely, he held the flambeau to the flaxen coat which enveloped him, and which instantly burst into a sheet of vivid flame. In less than half a minute, the whole 8 orangutans were blazing fiercely amid the shrieks of the multitude who gazed at them from below, horror-stricken and without the power to render them the slightest assistance. At length, the flames, suddenly increasing in virulence, forced the jester to climb higher up the chain to be out of their reach, and as he made this movement, the crowd again sank for a brief moment into silence. The dwarf seized his opportunity and once more spoke. "I now see distinctly," he said, "what manner of people these maskers are. They are a great king and his 7 privy councillors, a king who does not scruple to strike a defenseless girl, and his 7 councillors who abet him in the outrage. As for myself, I am simply Hop Frog the Jester, and this is my last jest." Owing to the high combustibility of both the flax and the tar to which it adhered, the dwarf had scarcely made an end to his brief speech before the work of vengeance was complete. The 8 corpses swung in their chains, a fetid, blackened, hideous, and indistinguishable mass. The dwarf hurled his torch at them, clambered leisurely to the ceiling, and disappeared through the skylight. It is supposed that Trippetta, stationed on the roof of the saloon, had been the accomplice of her friend in this fiery revenge, and that together they effected their escape to their own country, for neither was seen again. The fucking end. Yes!
That was dumb.
That was fucking great. I am sweating. That was exciting. That was some fucking... That was Game of Thrones level revenge scene. That really was. That was good shit right there.
Yeah, that was...
That was more than I could have ever asked for, honestly. I thought the people were just going to beat him to death or something. No, that was fucking great.
Yeah, that had all the makings of like a Jacobean revenge drama.
Yes. I was like, this would make an amazing like short film. Or if you like had some like cool puppetry stuff going, you could do a really cool
do something
play.
Wild on stage.
Really
with that,
cool play. And it would also give some great opportunity to little people or dwarves as actors. Like, fuck. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
That was fun. I knew it was going to go. Well, see, I didn't know it was going to go dark because we've read some Edgar Allan Poes that don't. Like, but once they started painting the king as such a fucking dick, like, I was like, if this doesn't go dark, I'm going to be disappointed. So I'm glad it went super dark to the point where they burned them to a crisp.
Well, and you must have known something was coming because I mentioned that this.
Oh yes, because it was the Terror of the Clown. I had completely like forgotten that was
this
associated
was one
with
of the predecessors
facts.
or the prototypes of the evil clown.
Oh, but was he evil? No, I don't think so. But yes, I'm sure the people who write history are the rich people.
Well, and the
is
idea
this based on
of
a true story.
The idea of a evil clown is not necessarily like your bad guys, criminals are not always people that you can't relate to.
Of course.
Oftentimes, if you look into the motivations in literature of people who look horrible,
of course,
it's like, are you really the bad guy?
And like Edgar Allan Poe wasn't even trying to make them look like they were the bad guy. But evil clown quotey fingers, it
displayed a lot of the hallmarks of the evil clown.
And the smart jester, like being afraid of the smart evil clown. Yes.
But yes, it is believed that this was based on actual events. There was an actual masquerade where several members of the court were burned to death in the 14th century.
That is fucking lit.
Yeah.
Pun intended. That was good shit, y'all. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that.
Yeah.
If you couldn't tell.
That was a good one. Well played. Hey, listener, what'd you think of that story? Did you enjoy it? I always like when we do Edgar Allan Poe. His writing is really good. And it's interesting because I feel like with the exception of The Black Cat, every time we've read, and I suppose even with The Black Cat, it was not the story I expected it to be.
Yes, absolutely.
But weirdly, like, he is never quite
predictable.
What I expect to come from him, which is cool.
He doesn't, so a lot of our authors like kind of have a thing. I mean, even like Agatha Christie, you're going to get a great mystery. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns in it, but it's going to be a great mystery. With Edgar Allan Poe, you never quite know what story you're about to get. Like, is it going to be like The Black Cat, a very disturbing, like abusive situation? Is it going to be like an ultimate revenge on like the monarchy? Like some of the other stories we've read are very funny, like almost parodies of life. Like, I mean, he really does pull from so many different tropes and genres that it is quite fun.
Yeah.
And the writing is always very good.
The versatility of a good artist.
There you go, right there.
All right. Well, go ahead and write in. Let us know what you thought about this one, because I'd really be curious to know. Also, please do, as I said in the beginning, share with us what the first time you can remember running across the trope or the genre of evil clown in horror. Yeah, because I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
And when you write in, please do share with us this week's secret passcode, which is Mask Your Balls.
Mask your balls.
That's it from me. You got anything else?
That's it. I mean, that was fun. I'm glad I had a glass of wine while I read that one. It seemed appropriate.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, until next week, this has been Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Evil clown, evil clown, evil clown, evil clown. He'll walk into your masquerade and fuck up your day.